Hello and welcome back. We are on the final part of the ultimate history of video games. How is everybody feeling tonight?
We're ready. We're ready. I already saw that we're getting horses, so that's going to be great.
Yeah. I believe he repeats this chapter title in Volume 2 when he's talking about Xbox as well.
Oh, Lord.
And, yeah, so this is going to be the 14th video on Stephen Kent's Ultimate History of Video Games. It has been quite a time. It has been well over 40 hours reading out this stuff. But we have reached the end, the final chapter, and after which we will surmise our thoughts, and then we'll talk about some other things. So, let us commence. Jacob, take Charles Belfield.
When you consider the strength of the PlayStation 2 hype, the cost of marketing a new platform in the North American market, when you consider that Microsoft has announced a $500 million marketing program for the launch of Xbox, and that Nintendo has a $5 billion war chest, and the overall power behind Sony's PlayStation brand, Sega does not have the ability to against those companies.
Sega!
And Sega! And since you look like him, Bard, take Seamus Blackley.
All right, here we go. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Well, it's good to see that not everybody squealed. It's amazing stuff that we've read about this product. You know that we supposedly had a developers conference. None of us knew what we had. None of us knew we had one, but we had one in Redmond, and everybody came from all over the world.
Yeah, they elaborate on that in some other interviews or whatnot. I can't remember what the whole thing is. Dale! You were Bill Gates before! We need you!
Come on. We need you. Please come back. Bill, please.
Someone do like a ping.
I did.
Or like a mention.
I messaged him directly.
Mr. Gates, we need you.
Well, Gates is in the middle of a bunch of depositions right now, I think.
Is he? Like what? What specifically?
Well, this is
this
was about the same time that the lawsuit was happening, the antitrust lawsuit.
That ended before. I mean, well, the judgment they were still fighting against, but all the kind of involvement stuff was before 2000, basically.
Yeah, it was decided in 2001, I think.
Yeah, it was like April, I think, because there was an
initial judgment that they were going to split up Microsoft, but then there was basically an appeal, and
yeah. And that caused the .com burst.
I don't.
Or it was one of the reasons.
Yeah, I don't. I've never seen anybody use that as a signaling for the .com bubble bursting, but.
It was just bad timing because it happened about the same time as well that GDC was going on.
Well, this was from GDC. This first quote here. Well, I guess Dale's not gonna come, so I'll have to take up the Bill Gates mantle myself. And we had some guys at Microsoft who came up and said we should do a console. On March 10th, 2000, less than 1 week after the launch of PlayStation 2 in Japan, Microsoft chairman Bill Gates stepped onto a stage at the San Jose Convention Center to give the most anticipated speech of the Game Developers Conference. Really, they used to hold in San Jose. I didn't know that. Or is that San Jose Convention Center in San Francisco? I don't know. Let me check. San Jose. Yeah, it's in San Jose. Dressed in a leather jacket with a large green X, he uttered the anticipated words that ignited the crowd. It's very exciting to be here today and have the opportunity to announce a whole new platform. A platform that all of you are going to take in directions that we can't even imagine. Gates' announcement was the culmination of a year of rumors and speculations. The project began in 1999, around the time that Sega and Sony first started jockeying for position. Sega's modest plans for Dreamcast, which were virtually unchanged from the plans for Master System and Genesis except for the inclusion of a modem, might have gone unnoticed by Microsoft's management, but Sony's Trojan horse strategy for taking over living rooms was another story. Sony's PlayStation 2 was attracting a lot of attention, and it would clearly do more than simply play games. Microsoft executives saw Sony creating a new market. A couple of things happened about the same time roughly a year ago. We are at an executive retreat in which the senior management of Microsoft goes away and ponders the company and the kinds of things they were doing. And one of the things they spent a lot of time talking about was rooms beyond the den, shall I say, where important things are going on in the world of technology and Microsoft doesn't have a big presence. One of those things is the rooms of the living room. Well, we're not a big player at this point, and if you look at the kind of entertainment that happens there, consoles are a huge part of it. But they were trying to get into set-top boxes for a really long time, and that wasn't panning out for them. Built by intelligent technology-savvy people, Microsoft attracted those who grew up playing video games. Some employees brought in arcade machines that they set on free play and placed in buildings for employees to use. A sky bridge between the two buildings on the main Redmond campus had so many coin-operated games that it looked like a video game arcade. Microsoft also attracted many elite veterans of the video game industry. Joe DeCure, an Atari engineer who'd helped develop the 2600, moved to Microsoft, and he did basically nothing. It was so... the processing chip for the 2600 was named Stella in honor of DeCure's bicycle. How do you put this here? How do you put this here?
Why there? Why, this is not a moment to put this. Make about a 2600, not...
I can't even remember if he mentioned DeCure originally with the 2600, or it was all just J minor or whatever. Howard Phillips, Nintendo's man who plays games for a living, joined Microsoft's entertainment division. And David Teal, who did sound for Qbert. None of these people mattered.
Not to be confused with Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel. Who's Peter Thiel?
I believe he was the PayPal guy.
Ah, okay. Yeah, there were a couple people who later worked at Microsoft that did actually matter. I'm trying to think of someone in particular. I know like a couple of the Amiga people worked at Microsoft. I mean, lots of people worked at Microsoft, but I can't remember who specifically. With all of this talent and enthusiasm, it was only a matter of time before groups of employees got together and developed game systems of their own. But Microsoft had never built a computer for sale, and in February 1999, it certainly had no intention of making a game computer. Nonetheless, on the company's campus in Building 27 and Building 5, a garage shop game console was taking shape in the spare time of 4 engineers, Seamus Blackley, Kevin Backus, Ted Hasse, and Otto Burks. Sony and Nintendo may have created unique machines with proprietary operating systems, but Microsoft's renegade gamers built their console based around basic PC architecture. Their machine would have a customized operating system with a stripped-down version of Windows, would use Microsoft's DirectX software, and would feature both a built-in hard drive and an Ethernet card for broadband communications. Did it have an Ethernet? Is that the way you connected? I can't remember.
Yeah.
That was the LAN port? Yeah, I guess.
It was a communications port, and it was all Ethernet, so it was easy to hook up two consoles.
Although the final specifications for the console would not be ready for another year, the Microsoft board approved the project in March 1999. I know that there's a lot, there's a lot of tellings of this tale, and I don't remember all the details, and I know that Alex would if he was here, so I'm sure that he could point out the errors. So we might have to redo this one sometime, but for right now, we're just getting to the end of this book. Over the next 10 months, the Xbox team remained a moving target for analysts and journalists alike. Microsoft neither confirmed nor denied the work on the project, which most people recognized as a fairly reliable confirmation. Several newspapers, including USA Today and the Wall Street Journal, published articles with Xbox specifications that proved incorrect when the final specs were released. I wrote the article for USA Today. So you're admitting that you're wrong, Kent. I wish you could admit that for the rest of the thing. Word about the Xbox often slipped out when Microsoft quietly discussed versions of its hardware with analysts and software makers. When Microsoft confirmed rumors that the console would include a graphics chip from a pioneering company called NVIDIA Corporation, many analysts and game enthusiasts suddenly began praising the console. Okay. Just like NVIDIA invokes praise. Maybe among people now, but I'm not sure back then.
It's strange that they meant like, yeah, no, with that it's like this. He mirrors it as if Nvidia was an upstart at the time, but they already pretty much they were established within rendering because of their rendering technology.
I mean, they
Way
were an
before the
offshoot
Xbox.
of 3DFX.
Yes, and one of their major things was actually that DirectX was largely non-functional on other people's hardware if it wasn't NVIDIA or Intel based. So it's kind of like the only choice they had to make it run properly would be having an NVIDIA NV2A in there. And they did go with that because that was pretty much the only thing. If they went with DirectX, that would run DirectX at an acceptable frame rate.
As Bill Gates stood before the enthusiastic crowd at the Game Developers Conference, he unveiled a list of nearly final specifications that were guaranteed to dazzle a technically literate crowd. Analysts had already pronounced Xbox NVIDIA chip superior to the graphics processing unit in the PlayStation 2, though practically the GameCube, the Xbox, and the PS2 are basically the same. There's no huge improvements either one way or the other. You can look at plenty of games that were on all three systems, and they look identical.
Yep. They are. There's only a difference in how shader computing is done and stuff like that, so the differences are minimal.
Yeah, I mean, and of course on the PS2 front, the development hardware was particularly difficult, and you did have to do custom stuff because it was PowerPC on the GameCube. But
yeah.
So it wasn't like it was easy to port them across, but if there was ever any incentive to make one version better, basically nobody ever did. And then you can compare the exclusive titles, but that's always fraught with difficulty. Analysts had already pronounced Xbox NVIDIA coupled with an 8 gigabyte hard drive, twice as much memory as the PlayStation 2, but the PlayStation 2 didn't have a hard drive. What are you talking about? What do you mean twice as much memory?
Now it's memory. It is.
Yeah, that he's mixing up terms here. But
yeah,
the PS2 didn't have 4 gigabytes of memory either.
No, he's trying to split it up, but it's a weird way of doing it because he's listing hardware, but he goes 8 gigabyte hard drive, then your RAM, and then the Ethernet card.
Oh, okay.
Which is
okay.
Weird.
So he's
making this listing, but it's just written weird.
All right. Well, let's see. How much RAM does the PS2 have? PS2's technical specifications, its own Wikipedia page. Thank you. Of course, when I search Xbox, it's going to give me a billion different things because Xbox One exists. Please kill me now. RAM.
The Xbox has 64 MBs of DDR RAM.
And the cache memory. RAM. 32 megabytes. So yeah, I guess. Yeah. You have DDR. The PlayStation only had RD RAM. Direct Rambus DRAM. I didn't know Rambus had its
DDR.
own.
The thing is, there's no real difference in the speed with handling, and the only reason why they had to use DDR SD-RAM was because it was the memory chip and the CPU both had to use the RAM as the main access point, but because of the DirectX overlay, that causes issues when you don't use DDR memory. It's also why you can't run DirectX on some older builds. If you build old PCs, you're going to run into trouble.
Oh. And an Ethernet card. Xbox appeared to be unstoppable. Yeah, because they released their specs. They were unstoppable. That night, 27 members.
It's very threatening.
That night, 27 members of Microsoft's Xbox team ate a celebratory dinner in a San Jose hotel. Other Microsoft employees saw them and sent bottles of champagne to their table in congratulations. Feeling like they had conquered the world, the team members joked and drank for hours. According to all reports, most team members were fairly drunk when they finally left the restaurant. Okay.
Sounds about right.
I mean, probably, but I don't know why.
I mean, this is still GDC, right?
I'm not like, okay, so yeah, it was after GDC.
Yeah, so GDC.
Well, you know, so I went to GDC in 2017, and yeah, like, I mean, the whole time was parties. It wasn't after nothing. It was party all the time.
With those things, it's all parties. And
yeah, I get conferences are all schmoozy and stuff. I mean, I don't drink, so it was torturous for me. I did not enjoy.
It's the only reason why there's so much security, because if it's a like fully sober convention, there's a lot less security. And if it's any other kind of convention, security's out in force, and it's purely because everybody's getting slammed.
I did get a lot of cool business cards though. Like the people at Blizzard have the best business cards because they like had like Lich King embedded into it. It was great.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I got some really classy business cards, and mine were not nearly that classy, but they were unique. They did stand out, and that was the point. Because I did a vertically oriented business card.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, I need to get some new ones because you know, I have a lot more stuff I can put on my resume now. But I mean, that schmoozing stuff ain't for me, but it's what you gotta do. So yeah, I do not doubt that they got drunk after GDC, but I don't know why you needed to say that, Kent. Rather than separate into groups when they reached the hotel elevator, the team decided to cram in together, far exceeding capacity. The last person in was Seamus Blackley. Yeah, he's really big. Well over 6 feet tall and quite sturdily built, Blackley saw that he could not cram through the elevator door, so he launched himself in horizontally on top of the crowd. When the elevator slid shut, the elevator dropped 3 stories, coming to a safe stop. Oh, Jesus. That would have pissed my pants. Holy fuck. Asked about this event later. Blackley, the college trade physicist
story.
who once worked on the Fermilab Super Collider. Did he? I can't remember. Commented, let's just say that when you cram 27 people celebrating people into an elevator with a 7-person limit, gravity happens quickly. He was a physicist, and his first big game that he worked on was Flight Unlimited. But I'm not sure he worked on the...
So basically just turned into Tower of Terror?
Yeah, that was it.
He did
You know, sometimes when you're just in an elevator and it goes down a slight bit, like, that by itself was terrifying enough. You don't need it to fall several stories. The fall of House of Sega. Or better yet, a Terminator, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, trying to play me out like as if my name was Sega. Is that that's on the song Jump Around? Really? Jump Around. That one? I don't remember this.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. When Sega first announced Dreamcast, former Nintendo of America chairman Howard Lincoln sniped that considering Sega's faltering financial position, the project was completely irresponsible. According to Sega Enterprises co-founder David Rosen, both he and company chairman Isao Kawa had wanted to leave the hardware business after Genesis. Isao Kawa constantly pushed Sega to create internet content and insisted Dreamcast include a modem. Okay, this is another weird thing to just shove in here. But it does speak to something interesting. It does appear that, especially post Dreamcast, Sega really tried to become a service provider. Like, they were building up a lot of network infrastructure. And it seemed like they wanted to do a lot of console internet stuff. But that never came to fruition because of their, continuing financial falling apart. But had things gone that way, they would have been in the position to be a service provider rather than a game maker from then on. The launch of PlayStation 2 broke huge holes in Sega's armor. While publicly remaining loyal to Dreamcast, several of Sega's top designers privately began admitting that they hope to see their games on PlayStation 2. Yute Saito, the independent developer who created Seaman, the best-selling Dreamcast game in Japan. No way! No way that's the best-selling Dreamcast game in Japan. I'm calling that out. Absolutely not. Lies and slander. Openly talked about releasing a PlayStation 2 version of his Talking Fish simulation. I forget, did Seaman actually come out on PS2? Bueller? It did, yes.
I know that Seaman 2 came out on...
There was no Seaman 2. Okay, yes, there was a Seaman 2.
There is a Seaman 2. How do I know this? Because I have it.
Also Japan exclusive, Seaman did come out on the PS2 in 2001. Rather than keep its designer groups entirely in-house, Sega has spun them off into 9 semi-autonomous organizations, naming its top designers as the heads of each independent studio. Within the industry, people quietly speculated that this new corporate structure would open the door for supporting other platforms. When asked if his AM2 team, designers of such games as Outrun and Space Harrier, might investigate other platforms, Sega's Yu Suzuki commented, "Of course, I think so. We still have a relationship with Sega, so we cannot just move out right away. Maybe gradually." Bard.
They've spun off from Sega, and they are 100% owned by Sega. If they are successful, they will have an IPO. Theoretically, they can do anything, but they are owned 100% by Sega. There is very little chance that they will make games for the PlayStation 2.
I don't know how he... Wait, so like... You spun out 8 subsidiaries, and you hope that they all have IPOs. That sounds like a really bad strategy.
Well, it's not Lucasfilm. They're not going to make a Pixar anytime soon.
Yeah.
No, right? It's.
I mean, and by the time Pixar was in that kind of position, they were not owned by Lucasfilm anymore.
Right, and
No, that's what I mean, though. Like,
if this is a statement from a COO, I would actually pull out any investment I have in that company because this is a very risky strategy.
I mean, on the front of games, this did end up producing some very good titles. Like, having that autonomy means you get Jet Set Radio and Space Channel 5, Shenmue.
Oh, of course, yeah. But I would have also rather have that those games also release on the PlayStation 2.
So this strategy was they were trying to find a new creative vision for Sega because that's what they thought they were lacking, but that wasn't it. Like,
that wasn't what they were lacking at all.
They were lacking money. They needed to make more positive business decisions.
Hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
But if he would have said there, and there is actually a chance that we will release certain games on the PlayStation 2, I would have kept my money in Sega. Because the chances of them making that money back would have been a lot higher.
Under this new system, Suzuki's AM2 team, which had long had its own identity, remained largely unchanged, but gained more independence, added Yuji Naka's Sonic team. Under this new structure, however, designers such as Hisao Guchi, Top Skater, Virtua Tennis, Crazy Taxi, and Tetsuya Mitsuguchi, Sega Rally, Space Channel 5, were able to expand their activities. Dreamcast needed an expanded library to survive, and between its independent studios and American publishing partners such as Visual Concepts, I don't think they were publishers. Sega became the most profitable publisher in the business. Yeah, let me look up Visual Concepts. I don't think they ever published anything. Yeah. I'll double check here. But yeah, I don't... Yeah, never. So... Long known for publishing innovative games, Sega also gave its design houses latitude to experiment. So he does go into this. Temporarily abandoning his arcade roots, Yu Suzuki began work on a Dreamcast game called Shenmue, basically an interactive 16-chapter novel. I'm not... I wouldn't call it that. The first installment of Shenmue, which contained only one chapter... What? Really? He wanted to have that many games? Was later rumored to have cost over $50 million to make. Later chapters would cost less to make, since much of the money spent on the game went into developing new technologies. New technologies, quote-unquote. With less than 3 million Dreamcasts sold worldwide, Sega could not hope to make a profit on the game. In Japan, where role-playing games are especially popular, and Yu Suzuki's notoriety as a game maker is second only to Nintendo's Shigeru Miyamoto, and both of them are second to who's the guy behind the Dragon Quest series? I'm forgetting him right now. Shows you how much I know. What's his name?
Shows how notorious he is. That's what it shows.
In America, Yuji Horii. That's what. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. He is the actual household name, and then you get to someone like Miyamoto, and then nowadays I'm sure Suzuki is pretty far down. I don't think I've ever seen a TV interview with Suzuki. I have seen him with Miyamoto and.
Oh,
Horii.
absolutely. Right. It's. With Suzuki, it's one of those things where over time he just went down the list so far that you won't see him now. That right now you're more likely to see guys from the old home computer crowd get an interview on TV than It's just sad, but it's life.
If we think of just the software business, very honestly speaking, we have not recouped yet. But when I think of the development advances we learned that can be applied to other games, that investment will someday be recouped.
Hideki Sato, President Sega Enterprises.
Yeah, Sato, very interesting guy. We translated his oral history, and it explained a lot of things about Sega. It's not that they hated the American office and they wanted to see the whole company fail because they hated having success. Sato has very intelligent things to say.
Awesome.
With approximately 1 million Dreamcast consoles sold in Japan, as well as over 2 million sold in the United States, Sega focused more of its attention on the US market. The developers are starting to realize that they have to fish where the fish are biting, became a slogan that Sega of America President and COO Peter Moore repeated in many interviews during the 8 months between the PlayStation 2's Japanese launch and its US debut. Under Moore's leadership, Sega of America looked for ways to shore its base. Shore its base? Isn't it shore up its base? Or maybe that's just an Americanism. Because it's like, you don't hold down the fort. One of its more dramatic moves was the formation of SegaNet, an internet service provider created specifically for handling Dreamcast business. Slated for official launch on September 7th, 2000, the day of the MTV Music Awards, SegaNet was designed to reflect an aggressive new stance Sega was taking towards online games. I'm not sure. No, SegaNet already existed by this time.
It did, yeah.
Yeah. SegaNet was I think it's so it was on the Saturn, and I think it was also just like a PC thing too, or maybe I'm
It's
forgetting. But
1996.
yeah,
It's 1996 on the Sega Saturn, and then on the
I'm forgetting
launch of the
what
Dreamcast.
their like general internet thing was called, because they had that too.
Yeah, they had the online gaming service Heat.net.
Yeah, HeatNet. I think that's what
Yeah,
I was thinking.
that was yeah, and that connected to SegaNet.
Yeah,
But
so it was actually the backbone of their PC version of
yeah,
the internet as well. So yeah, SegaNet was around much before it came out on Dreamcast.
yeah, on the launch of Dreamcast, it was
Yeah,
something that they got out of the gate with because their entire infrastructure, how the Dreamcast worked with all their online games and services, was from day one using SegaNet because it worked over phone line. That's how I remember that.
so internet providers specifically for handling Dreamcast business. Um, no, I don't think it was. They had a different. Hold on, Dreamcast Online functionality. Yeah, so it did. No, it didn't have. So it had the basic modem. Yeah, and I think they had a different service that you actually plugged into.
Yeah,
It wasn't
but
SegaNet initially.
it well for the Dreamcast it was SegaNet because SegaNet released with the release
No,
of
it
the
didn't.
console.
It didn't.
It didn't.
It was not SegaNet that actually launched with the Dreamcast. Um, like I'm looking at the wiki
Huh.
page, which is actually well cited and whatnot. Um, yeah, it wasn't SegaNet. This was the launch date for SegaNet on Dreamcast. So I don't know the specifics on what you were doing beforehand, if you were doing stuff beforehand, but yeah, it took this long to get SegaNet on Dreamcast.
Because we had Dream Arena in Europe. I know that one.
Yeah,
That
that was a
released on
separate
October
service. Yeah,
14th. Yeah, and that directly interfaced with Drycast. So there was no. So pretty much Dream Arena was directly a thing that interfaced with Drycast, and
yeah,
it allowed European players to also play with Japanese players, and for U.S. players that wasn't automatically possible. They'd have to go through this weird thing like Earthlink later on and
mm.
stuff like that. So it could be that the I don't know how it worked in the US or if they had an extra service because you had ISAO on the Japanese side, um, but for Sega Europe, it did a partnership with all ISPs, but because of European rulings and all of that, all those ISPs had to work together with ISAO, or they weren't allowed to create
yeah.
the
Like I'm
infrastructure.
looking at the Wikipedia, and there's a whole lot of stuff about the infrastructure, but I'm just
So
not.
it's a whole weird, yeah.
Yeah, but it was not. Yeah, it
It
was
was
not
the US SegaNet.
SegaNet
That's true. Yeah.
initially. Up until launch of SegaNet, Sega seemed to pay little attention to Dreamcast 56K modem. The only Dreamcast game with an online component available in the US market was Choo Choo Rocket, a strategy game of Yuji Naka's Sonic Team. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, with Choo Choo Rocket, it's actually kind of funny because it was hugely popular for a while, and you would get it for free if you worked at 3M at the time for some reason.
What?
Yeah, that's how my dad got his copy.
Okay. More stated purpose for initiating SegaNet was to beef up the American market at $21.95 per month. Sega's new service was competitively priced, and subscribers who signed up for a 2-year contract to receive a free Dreamcast and keyboard. Yeah, it had a keyboard. If things went according to plan, a plurality of future Dreamcast games would also feature online components. E3 2000. Bing, 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 bing. As they approached, the industry looked forward to the 2000 Electronic Entertainment Expo in Los Angeles for details about how Sony would launch PS2 in the United States and how Sega would respond. In the days before the show began, Sony, Sega, and Nintendo wrangled for position. Sony announced that it would hold its pre-E3 press conference on Wednesday, May 10th, during noontime slot generally reserved for Nintendo's conference. Though members of Nintendo's PR team considered sticking to their original plans, they realized they could not compete. Sony would announce the price and launch date of the PlayStation 2. The only big announcements Nintendo had would be new games. Nintendo gave up its slot. Sony held its press conference in Los Angeles soundstage not far from the convention center. Thousands of journalists and industry insiders crammed inside the studio grounds and were fed a lunch of pasta and salad as Sony executives prepared and made last-minute changes to presentations. You could tell that Kent was not impressed with the lunch, for he outed it. Pasta and salad for peasants. Ugh. When the
That's what you not go to a conference for pasta and salad. That's no.
Hey, that's at least they have salad. Well, places I go to, they don't have,
True.
all they have is junk. When the doors opened, the excited crowd pushed in as if fighting its way into a rock concert. Sony's announcements proved worth the wait. We promise it will be worth the wait. Sony Computer Entertainment America Chairman Kazuhira began the event by describing differences between the Japanese PlayStation 2 and the one Sony would introduce to the North American market. The American version would have its DVD drivers programmed into its circuits as firmware, avoiding some of the bugs that plagued the Japanese version. I did not know about this, that they had like a hardware solution in Japan for the DVDs.
Yes. Yes.
I didn't know.
And it's actually more common in Japan to do that kind of stuff. So that the strangely enough, the Xbox had a fix for its DVD drives in the original models not working 100% properly. And yeah.
Also, the US version had a built-in bay for a hard drive Ethernet card peripheral that Sony had under development. Really, that wasn't on the Japanese model. Okay, that's interesting. I have seen that port, and I did use it. The one time that I used so we got a PlayStation like hookup thing, and the one time that I used it was on Ratchet and Clank 3. They had an online multiplayer component on that, and I played about one game on it because nobody in my area, because it was limited to the local area, was actually playing.
I only used it for Linux. That's literally the only thing. Yeah.
As for price and launch date, well, Sony had to abandon its traditional September launch date. Yeah, traditional, the second one. PlayStation would be released in the United States on Thursday, October 26th, making it to market in time for the 2000 Christmas season. Like the original PlayStation, this new and powerful machine that played movies on DVD as well as games would launch with just the... New and powerful machine would launch with a modest $299 price tag. But Sony was not just releasing a new game machine. PlayStation 2 would become a hub of the living room. The PlayStation 2 computer entertainment system is not just the future of video game entertainment, it is the future of entertainment, period. Literally had this same quote at the top of the chapter. Why are you doing this, Kent? Not necessary.
That little pull quote action.
Sony also addressed concerns about the lack of software during the Japanese launch. According to Hirai, the PlayStation would launch with more than 20 games. Lack of software. 13 games. What is with you, Kent? Why? Why are you so obsessed with this? This has become the most annoying thing. To ensure this, Sony Computer Entertainment America partnered up with Electronic Arts, a powerful ally that could provide the game content that was so obviously missing at the March launch. Electronic Arts showed clips of Madden NFL 2001, NASCAR, and SSX for PlayStation 2. Who remembers SSX? I think I had one of those games.
I still play SSX actually quite often, but I play it on the I play SSX 3 on the Xbox One in backwards compatibility mode. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I have the PS1 one. While Sony because I won that game in a crane game at a local fair. The it was a snowboarding game for PS1. I think it was SSX.
Nice.
Bard just showed me his PS2 collection. While Sony demonstrated Gran Turismo 2000, the third installment in its highly successful racing series of realistic driving simulations, the only Sony-published game that would be ready for the launch of the PlayStation 2 was Fantavision, a strategy game in which players grouped and exploded skyrockets streaming across gorgeously rendered night skies. Anybody here played Fantavision?
I have once in a store. It was demoed quite extensively in France for some reason.
Sony eventually scrapped Gran Turismo 2000 and released a much improved game called Gran Turismo 3 in June 2001.
I actually do like Fantavision. It's a very nice puzzle game.
I've only ever heard of it. I've never seen anything of it.
Oh, well, it's a solid 6 out of 10.
Fantavision just sounds like a product placement for Coke.
Right? Right, but it's actually kind of all right. It's a real time puzzle game, but it's weird because it's all these fireworks coming up and you have to match it. It was yeah.
Due largely to the overall disappointing quality of the PlayStation 2 library, it took 15 months for the first million-selling game to appear on the system. That game, Capcom's Onimusha Warlords, was followed closely by the Japanese release of Gran Turismo 3, which was an instant million-seller. Like Nintendo, Sega was forced to compete against hardware by announcing new software. Sega held an all-but-ignored barbecue outside Sony's conference. The Sega executives gave endless interviews about their plans for SegaNet, but as the pre-show events finished up, most people were still talking about PlayStation 2. And people continued to discuss PlayStation 2 throughout the show, but in an increasingly poor light as E3 2000 continued, it became abundantly clear that while more games would be available for the American launch, only a few of them lived up to expectation. Sega, on the other hand, left many attendees very impressed. Visual Concepts, the Sega-owned U.S. game developer making most of Sega's sports games, completed NFL 2K1, a football game with a robust online component. Not having to compete for such variables as processor speeds, modem speeds, and graphical cards as PC game publishers did, Visual Concepts was able to concentrate all its efforts into optimizing the game for the Dreamcast and its 56K modem. The end result was a game that ran nearly as smoothly online as it did offline. Sega had other surprises too. Sega showed Seaman, a game in which players...
You really can't do that on stage anymore. Show your semen on stage. That's especially not when it's Leonard Nimoy. Then this kind of gets you in trouble.
A game in which players used a microphone to communicate with an extremely ugly talking fish. Hey, that was his words, by the way, not mine. NBA 2K1 Shenmue and Space Channel 5, a game in which players helped a sexy news anchor with bright pink pigtails rescue a space station from aliens by dancing, and more. That is a condensed explanation of that game, I guess. An air of desperation hung over the Sega booth, and many attendees knew that the company was fighting for its life, but watching the go-go dancers and other trappings around the Sega booth, many people gained confidence that the Dreamcast might survive. All Sega of America needed, according to COO Peter Moore, would be to somehow reach the 5 million consoles sold mark to double its install base by the end of the year. Now that Sega was giving away Dreamcast as a premium for joining SegaNet, and with a line of good games on the way, Moore believed he could reach his goal. But the noose continued to close around Sega. On May 22nd, 9 days after E3, Isao Okawa, The chairman of CSK, Sega's parent company, removed Shoriichi Irimajiri as president of Sega and took control of the company. People who were unfamiliar with Okawa feared that he might close Sega, but he openly advocated Sega's abandoning the hardware business, once publicly stated that there would be no follow-up console to the Dreamcast, and felt that the futures of Sega and Internet games were inseparably connected. One thing no one could challenge, however, was Okawa's commitment to Sega. In summer of 1999, he personally loaned the company nearly $500 million of his own money to help cover debts. No, it was not his own money. He gave the stock of Sega to Sega. And I think it wasn't even valued at that.
He gave back his stock options.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what happened.
I'm not sure it was 1999, but yeah.
Which is still valiant, mind you. It's still a big deal, but it's not $500 million on the table. Here you go, right?
Yeah, it did save Sega. If he had not done that, Sega would have died.
Oh, absolutely. It releases a lot of assets that you can use instantly.
And the reason he did it, which I'm not sure he's going to cover in this book, is because Okawa was dying of cancer, and he knew. So he gave up the stock.
Shit. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. It's even a more like, I want Sega to exist after I'm gone, and I'm not going to use this money for anything else.
He basically took the responsibility on. He took on the role of CEO and gave his stock back, just to keep Sega alive. And I don't think he had like any children or anything, so it was like, it wasn't. And he was rich from other ventures too, because he had stock in Sega, but he also had stock in the parent company CSK, because that was his company.
No.
So I'm sure he had plenty of money when he died, but yeah, he put a lot of money back into Sega.
That's awesome.
Jacob, you can read for Mr. Iwata.
The fact of the matter is that people are going to look for their entertainment to come from somewhere, and it does not necessarily have to come from games.
Iwata before he was famous. Look at that. Beautiful. He was just a random person that Kent grabbed to give him a quote.
It's something funny with Satoru Iwata, because he used to visit like the MSX conventions, like the really small ones, all over the world. Until he became CEO, right? That's once he got higher up there, after that it just stopped.
Yeah, I remember that. Like, I think there's like a talk of him from like 2000 or 2001. I can't remember if it was GDC or something, but it was like in a classroom, so it was like super intimate.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he would have loved to continue doing it, because he really was a game developer at heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is one of the smallest MSX conventions in the Netherlands, and he'd go there once every 4 years, which is just so he'd just talk about MSX development, which is a weird thing to talk about when you're working for Nintendo, but it's just because he was a developer.
Yeah, he was a genuine guy, and we need more people like him in the higher positions, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. The drop in the Japanese game market started so slowly that few people saw the shift take place. Just as the American arcade business started drying up in 1982, not true, but we already covered this. Japanese arcades started showing signs of distress in 1998. Pretty sure it was before that too, but yeah. Sega, Japan's largest and strongest arcade company, began closing locations in 1999. And of course, the famous Sega building in Akihabara is gone now. Sad. Never got to visit. I forget, Bart, did you go to Japan? Did you see that building?
I actually have. Yes. I the worst thing is I walked by it and I didn't even go inside it.
Oh, man.
That sort of thing. I'm still kicking myself for that. I was just, I have plenty of time. Sega's going to be around. And I was right. Sega was around. But, not their arcades themselves.
Yeah, they sold off that operation.
They're still making new arcade machines, though. So
they're still making the games, but the spirit of the legacy of the arcade buildings is kind of going away.
It's done. Yeah.
It's not gone, but it's going away.
Well, certainly took a hit during COVID.
Well, yeah. I mean, there were many factors that were kind of leading up to it.
And also, like, the Chinese companies doing all the arcade stuff it's really strange, but they do have a better grip on making money on arcades. And in the end, if your arcade's not profitable, having 6 floors of arcade is kind of weird.
Well, now they're just cyber cafes.
Yeah, true.
The following year, the closures even included some of its flagship Joyopolis virtual theme parks, Joypolis actually, Joypolis virtual theme parks. He didn't mention Joypolis at all. I don't recall ever mentioning Joypolis. And I mean, yeah, everybody else was closing down their theme parks too, like Taito Wonder Egg and Namco. What was the Namco one? The kind of mini theme park.
Oh Lord, I did go to one of those, so.
I can't remember. In 2001, Namco and Taito, the other titans of the Japanese arcade industry, followed Sega's lead. But I mean, it's a gradual thing. I don't like the way he reduces this. We have closed many of our centers, which was hard business. We have almost finished for now, and we will begin looking into opening new amusement centers again. Of course, in the future, we will begin to build again. Fortunately, in the arcade business, Sega is dominant and the main manufacturer of the machines. So we will try to improve our position for the arcade business area. I think Sega is the only company making profits from the arcade business right now. Namco is losing money because they have not done the restructuring that Sega has done to this business center. Sega scrapped the bad amusement centers. Namco recently announced that they will close a couple hundred amusement centers. And so then there will be a rebound, and then there will be a downbound after this period. But drops in the Japanese game industry did not stop with arcades, with Japanese consumers purchasing more games per console than other consumers. The Japanese market had long been the most lucrative of the three major video game markets. Japan, Europe, and North America. If you were an individual publisher looking to make money on each game, yes. But not in terms of the money coming in. That's just not true. In 1997, Japanese consumers spent 750 billion yen on video game software and hardware. By 1999, overall game spending dropped to 600 billion yen, approximately $5 billion. Some of this was bound to happen, having shipped approximately 8.5 million PlayStations into a country with an entire population of 127 million. Sony had saturated the market. By 2000, with the original PlayStation now 6 years old and PlayStation 2 only available in limited quantities, Sony's sales were bound to drop. Bard, can you take KG Honda?
The reason for the decline is because the Japanese video game industry is experiencing a change in generations of hardware with Sony Computer Entertainment's launch of the PlayStation 2, as well as the Microsoft's announcement of Xbox and Nintendo's announcements of GameCube. Throughout the changes in hardware generations, consumers tend to refrain from purchasing old generation products. And developers tend to lack the necessary skills to support the development of quality products that fully benefit the high-powered new generation hardware. These circumstances sometimes create a downward spiral. That is exactly what affected the sales of video games in Japan last year.
Yeah, then Kent pulls this quote out again for the beginning of the next book, and then he's like, he was basically lying. It's basically what
next book.
Out of his quote. Yeah, there's a volume 2. We're not going to read it on stream because it came out this year.
Right.
He's saying he's basically lying because
I was just joking.
Yeah, so he's saying he's basically lying because phone games were actually what made the downturn of console games in 2001. I'm not sure how true that was at that very moment.
Well, you had several operators actually in Japan moving up quite heavily. And because a large part of the business of video games was working people, in Japan especially, a large market is actually salarymen who buy a console and buy a bunch of software for it. And every time they need to relax, they just buy a new game, which adds up really quickly. Um, but that shifted to mobile,
Yeah, I know
and that
that like they
shift
went big on mobile, but I'm not sure 2001 would that really have done a dent in like the PS2 market? That's the question.
it depends 'cause they had a distribution platform right there. I do think that KG Honda is really overstating it, how much it could have been. I do think that with his, like Enix made a lot of slower paced games, so they would feel it more heavily, but they would also be much more likely to go, let's go on this mobile thing. We can just release
I mean,
RPGs on
they did
mobile.
fine on mobile. I'm not sure if they were there like right at the
Yeah,
beginning, but like a lot of the people who were right there at the beginning didn't last. That's
no,
true in
no,
both
that's true.
America and Asia. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's absolutely
most
true.
of the big publishers were not on mobile, and I don't think that it was necessarily the thing in 2001. If you said like 2004, I would say yeah,
Oh,
that
absolutely.
it was
In
absolutely denting
2001,
by then.
that's
Well, year on year, what doesn't really matter. I mean, we can be granular with years in this instance because everything was moving fast. But like,
yeah.
you go from like iMode to some like going to
Uh,
like
d- d-
smartphones and all that.
iMode was okay. This is kind of important to understand. iMode was relatively huge in the amount of money it brought in certain areas. Um, it wasn't as much that that there were a lot of users. It was that a lot of users spent a shit ton of money on iMode, and that's why it lasted as long as it did. And it was mostly software sales. So, for instance, like Namco and Namco Bandai made like had for most of their software like a million paid subscribers for their software and for their users was normal. So a million people buying their software in 1999 on the iMode was considered a normal software release. So it could have been that it references mostly that, and but it wouldn't have made sense for somebody like for a corporation of Enix to go, yeah, that's a real dent in a completely separate market because that's how you have to see it at that point. If
Yeah,
you go for
let me pull
IMO,
this up because I happen to have the book right here, uh, and I'll give you exactly what Kent says in the next book. Honda, because he uses this same quote.
I mean, it's a similar argument to what was that would be happening with like AOL and stuff like that in the '90s here.
Okay, I'm not saying
And
that
then
phone. So
nowadays we have like Roblox stuff making money when a lot of us in this generation have barely heard of it.
yeah,
So, other widely acknowledged causes for the drop in sales were Japan's growing mobile phone industry and the dwindling last generation hardware. Owing to recent changes in the local mobile market, the relatively recent innovation of texting had become available, attracting a younger market between cell phones siphoning off consumer dollars and the cyclical end of the current generation. Some drop in sales was unavoidable. And then he does the last part, he does this last paragraph here. And then he says, when pressed by the interviewer, Honda acknowledged that Japan's growing interest in mobile phones cut into game sales.
it could be, but I don't think it cut into game sales. I think that Honda himself just wanted to focus on that. Especially in 1999, iMode, like everybody who jumped into iMode was making bank. Like they were like Bandai, for instance, was one of the reasons why they were able to open chapters suddenly in Bulgaria and two more in France, a couple more in Germany, was purely for iMode and the development for that in that region. You don't start an entire new office if it doesn't bring in cash. And for a company like Enix, who historically focuses on that same market that the iMode tries to grab, I can get why he says it. I don't think that's cutting it. I don't think that's impacting sales at all, because it is in the end a completely separate market.
Yeah, because
Right?
the thing that I was getting at is just that Kent later applies this thing that he got that very specifically is talking about, you know, the launch of these new consoles, and that's why Japan's
Yeah.
market is down. And then he's like, oh, but actually he means that it's down because of mobile games, because mobile games weren't a factor in in 2001 to him as an American, but now
Yeah.
in 2021 he realizes that they were something that actually had to be built up to.
Yeah. So now he's just using it as a quick way to, even though the quote itself is also something that literally focuses on, I am Keiji Honda of Enix, and we already have all these games for systems that you put in your pocket, and we really like the focus on the mobile part, and we would like to have you pay attention to the mobile part. And now suddenly the writer has to shift that, as iPhone released in the meantime. So exactly like you said, right? The iPhone releases, and now he tries to incorporate the saying in retrospect, even though he should have done that here. He should have talked about in that first book of, hey, like there was something happening there.
Yeah, but
and you
Japan
can't.
doesn't exist according to Kent, so I
Yeah.
mean, barely. It is a far-off land of magic and wonder.
Of mystery.
So,
Of mystery.
some bright spots appeared in the overall picture when Enix Corporation released Dragon Quest VII for the original PlayStation. Thousands of young men camped outside of local game stores, just as they had for PlayStation 2 game consoles. Predicting huge sales based on past popularity, Enix was prepared. By the end of the year, the company had sold more than 3 million copies of Dragon Quest VII. Those sales eventually climbed over 4 million, making it the most popular PlayStation game ever sold in Japan. Truth.
Whew. And
Also,
it's a great game.
I've heard, but I have not played it. Also, a thing from World Haas. Fortunately, Sega is quote-unquote reopening the arcade right across the street. I mean, it's not Sega anymore, but yeah, I mean, great if you have arcade, here's to arcades.
And yeah, here's to arcades. I love them. I work in one. It's great. It's I want more of them.
The same week that Dragon Quest VII temporarily ignited the Japanese market, Nintendo unveiled its long-awaited next-generation game console at its annual Space World trade show. Now he's saying it correctly! He was saying Shoshinkai earlier. Now he's saying Space World. Held in the Makuhari Messe, the same convention center in which Nintendo 64 had been revealed in 1995, the show drew press from around the world. First unveiled by Genyo Takeda, the man who succeeded Gunpei Yokoi as the Nintendo's Dean of Engineering, the new system was called GameCube. Built around a 64-bit power PC processor, GameCube was the shape and size of a small Kleenex box, an approximately 5-inch cube that would be manufactured in a number of bright colors and would use a 2.9-inch mini DVD-ROMs. Is it called a mini DVD-ROM? I'm not sure. Let's check GameCube. I know that when I got them from Sony in my camcorder, they were called mini discs. They were the same size, but let's see.
I know Panasonic produced them
GameCube
on
game
the,
disc.
Yeah, on the GGD. It's mini DVD based, but it has slightly more storage.
Yeah.
Optical discs.
Mini DVD based technology, which reads
Okay.
a constant velocity.
So mini DVD should so it's not a DVD-ROM. I mean, it's
No.
probably, but yeah. Mini
DVD-ROM. Well, DVD-ROM is a very specific format.
Unlike Xbox and PlayStation 2, GameCube would be a dedicated game machine with no ambitions of playing DVD movies, except if you bought the Panasonic model that was shiny and chrome. The show closed with a lengthy presentation by star game designer Shigeru Miyamoto, discussing the features he had requested in the new game console and just demonstrating the level of graphics it could achieve. The audience applauded wildly. Game enthusiast audiences always applauded wildly whenever Miyamoto spoke. Still true today. I shouldn't criticize.
Not
Old
since
habits
Wii
die
Music.
hard. Was that?
Not since Wii Music.
Alright, yes. But the real metric is how many Americans have gotten a PlayStation 2 in their home, plugged in, and are actively purchasing software. How many have left the factory is meaningless. Dreamcast started with a bang, then found itself adrift in the US market. Sega crossed the 1 million units sold mark after only a few weeks following September 1999 launch, but sales ground to a halt by the first half of 2000. Price drops and hot new games brought short spikes in hardware sales, and with an 8-to-1 software to hardware tie ratio, Dreamcast owners were clearly happy with their system and buying lots of software. I highly doubt that it was 8-to-1.
Also, you correctly said first half, but it just says the first of 2000.
Oh, the first of 2002. Nice. But Sega needed to increase its install base, otherwise the onslaught of PlayStation 2 would wipe Dreamcast out in the United States as it had in Japan. Yet nothing seemed to work. Sega dropped the price of the Dreamcast to $149, half the price of PlayStation 2. Sales jumped briefly, then dropped. Even offering free Dreamcasts with SegaNet did not move the quantity of units Sega needed to sell. Jacob, can I get you?
Sega failed to reach the targets we wanted in terms of hardware sell-through. Therefore, our software, in the same time frame, didn't reach the levels that we had forecasted or expected. Although our tie ratio for the year 2000 was 8-to-1, but 8-to-1 on a small install base didn't give us the revenue or the profit from that software that we needed for our business model to keep this platform viable in the medium to long term.
In mid-September, Sega received a stay of execution from the most unlikely of sources, Sony Computer Entertainment of America. With the launch of the PlayStation 2 just 1 month away, story began surfacing that Sony did not have enough PlayStation 2 consoles to meet its promises. Rumor had it that Sony had somewhere between 300,000 to 500,000 US consoles ready for shipment, and that the company would either send half shipments to retailers or postpone the entire launch. But if there was any truth to the rumor, Sony refused to comment. Then a reporter working for USA Today, and the thing down here is going to say that's Kent, contacted executives at 2 top electronic game specialty stores. Neither executive have heard about the shortages, but both took the rumors seriously and called Sony for explanation. What do you think of the shortages for PlayStation 2? Well, 1 million units is a lot less than we would have wanted for such an important product, but we'll have to work with what we get. What about 300,000 units? My sources say Sony only has 300,000 to 500 consoles to ship in. 300,000? I haven't heard that. Where did you hear that? How good is your information? I don't have any comment. On September 20th, Sony Computer Entertainment of America President Kazuo Hirai held a press conference in which he announced cutbacks on PlayStation 2 shipments due to part shortages in Japan. Wow, this sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Instead of shipping 1 million consoles, Sony could only ship 500,000 for October 26th launch date, with an additional 100,000 consoles being shipped into the United States every week for the remainder of the year. In an industry rife with rumors and conspiracy theories, Sony's announcement led to wild speculation. People speculated that Sony was withholding shipments to build demand for the system, but there were no good games in the launch library, or because it did not want a major rollout until it had more first-party games available. Several publications sent reporters out to visit electronic stores along Akihabara that October and discovered that a small but steady supply of PlayStation 2 inventory. What few people knew is that the graphics synthesizer used in the US version of the PS2 was different than the one used in Japan. Scandal. As Sony optimized its manufacturing, the company created a smaller version of its custom graphics chip for the United States, and glitches in manufacturing the smaller chip has caused the part shortage. Whatever had caused the shortage, you just said, the end result was that many retailers had allowed customers to reserve PlayStation 2 consoles based on twice the allocations they eventually received. When they learned that shipments were only half what they expected, managers at stores such as Babbage's, Software, etc., and Electronics Boutique, remember when they were all separate? Were forced to inform customers that they would not receive the consoles they had reserved months in advance. Intended or not, Sony received a flood of positive publicity from stores of shoppers camping outside stores in the slim hope of finding a PlayStation 2. The oddest story, however, dealt with Iraq. A persistent story surfaced that Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein was scouring the United States in the hope of purchasing a few thousand PlayStation 2s. News analysts immediately remembered the limitations the Japanese government had placed on the exportation of PlayStation 2s and began speculating that Hussein might be using them for launching guided missiles. I was interviewed by NBC Nightly News on this subject. My speculation was that if there's any truth lay behind the rumor, it meant that Saddam's nephews were trying to get a nice surprise under the old Ramadan tree. there's no tree in Ramadan.
Really weird quote, it's probably true that he would get them as gifts, but that Ramadan tree quote?
Yeah.
The Ramadan tree.
Ramadan tree. Of course, it would have been nearly impossible to find several thousand PlayStation 2s at regular retail prices. You could occasionally find them selling in toy stores and packages, finding the console and additional controller, a memory card, and 2 games selling for $599 was not uncommon. You could also find PlayStation 2s selling through online auctions and classified ads for anywhere near $600 to $800. According to news stories, Hussein ended up purchasing several hundred PS1s, a newer and smaller configuration of the original PlayStation. How do you hide that? How do you hide someone purchasing several hundred of the specialty PS1s? And he happens to be Saddam Hussein. In truth, Sony's hardware shortage was not as significant as many people said. Had Sony shipped 2 million PlayStation 2s in October, the supplies would still have been short. Lack of adequate software was more of a lasting problem carried over from Japan. A few PlayStation 2 games stood out as fairly strong. Madden NFL 2001 and SSX, both from Electronic Arts, were the stars of the launch lineup. Rockstar Games, a tiny company that might have been normally gone unnoticed, had 2 driving games, Midnight Club and Smuggler's Run. I've heard Midnight Club is really good, but I've never played it.
Midnight Club is actually really good. It's a great racing game.
It did fairly well, and a company called THQ, best known for its WWF wrestling games, were the fair reviews for a role-playing game called Summoner. Yes, I've heard of such. THQ published that? Really? Wow. THQ really did whatever.
Summoner?
Yeah.
Yeah, they really did.
They did.
I mean, you would think they would be best known just for their flood of licensed games.
Licensed crap, yeah. But yeah, I didn't know they published a Summoner. I mean, later on they published Darkstalkers, so I guess it's not that crazy. This was Sega's golden opportunity. Sony did not have enough inventory, did not have many good games, and its console cost twice as much as Dreamcast. Beyond that, with NFL 2K1, Sega scored a critical hit, and NBA 2K1 and Shenmue followed closely. I think Shenmue did extremely well. NBA 2K1 did very, very well. Jet Grind Radio was a bit of a disappointment. We still believe it was a great game and somehow didn't capture the imagination of the gamer, but Shenmue hit its quota. NBA 2K1 hit its quota. NFL 2K1, which was an earlier launch, clearly hit its quota. Retailers clamored to bump up orders of Dreamcast on the theory that disappointed shoppers would purchase Sega console rather than head home empty-handed. As Thanksgiving rolled past, Dreamcast sales surged, and it looked as if Sega was given a reprieve. We came out the day after Thanksgiving and had a huge day, but the following week, US retail went into the toilet. If you go back and check the news, you'll see that overall retail and consumer electronics in particular really fell flat. I think the PS2 effect that we were relying upon did not work for us. We had thought we would get a spillover effect. I think we discounted what human nature really is, that people will hang around for as long as possible working on the theory they're going to get something in the second week of December. So they're hanging on to your video game dollars. What effectively happened is that PlayStation 2 lack of availability froze the marketplace within the video game sector. People were willing to wait to see if they could get things on their hands or invest in their dollars in very different things. DVDs and other consumer electronics, such as Poochie, a toy robot dog created by Sega and marketed by Tiger Electronics. Who had a Poochie? Anybody here?
I did not.
Good.
Like, what is a Poochie?
I don't know what a Poochie.
Like, why does it have that name? That's I now got to look. Oh, it's one of those. Yes, I actually did have one.
Oh, did you?
I did have one. This is not okay. I did have one. I did have one. I'm gonna put it in the voice chat.
Okay.
A link to the Wikipedia page. You read it on your own time. It
Sega stumbled into the. Okay. Sega stumbled into the new year, having fallen far short of Moore's stated goal of 5 million Dreamcasts. Even giving Dreamcast away as a premium to SegaNet subscribers, Sega had not been able to lift the US install base beyond 3 million units, and the worldwide install base was only at 6.5 million. And, oh yeah, these things. Okay, I remember these, yeah. Did I have one? I can't remember. I know at least some friend had one. Yeah, I remember those. In January 2001, stories started circulating about executives from Microsoft and Nintendo visiting Sega to evaluate the prospect of purchasing the company. As early as December 27th, the New York Times reported that Nintendo had entered into discussion about purchasing Sega. No way they actually considered this. It's the same thing as like when Microsoft was like, oh, we'll buy Nintendo, but Nintendo was never going to sell.
Considering is something that is thrown around a lot, but the amount of times it's discussed during meetings about who to buy is like 5 times a day. Somebody will just throw up, "We'll buy Microsoft." Like, it's just, even if it's not reasonable or realistic, if they don't know what to throw up, they'll throw something up, and everybody will go, "Okay, we're just going to dismiss that." So yeah.
Sega denied the story, but the rumors persisted. Then, in the last week of January, a small Japanese news service published a wire story claiming that Dreamcast had been discontinued. At this point, Sega admitted that while Dreamcast had not been discontinued, the manufacturing plant was no longer in operation because of inventory concerns. On January 24th, Sega released a press release announcing the discontinuation of Dreamcast, and company executives Charles Belfield and Peter Moore personally explained the situation to the press. Bard. Once again, Charles Belfield. Bard.
Yeah, I'm here. Sega will adopt a multi-platform or platform-agnostic role or view of the video game hardware industry. We will develop content for multiple devices from cell phones right through and including video game systems, including those of our competitors. Secondly, Sega is confirming effective immediately a cease of manufacture of the Sega Dreamcast system, and effective as April 1st, 2001, we will have completed a management reorganization and a restructuring of Sega as a company to purely be focusing on a multi-platform strategy as a third-party publisher to multiple platforms.
It took Sega 22 months to sell 6.5 million Dreamcasts worldwide. By comparison, Sony shipped 10 million PS2s in under 15 months, and its sales kept accelerating. With Sony screaming Dreamcast out of the market and Nintendo and Microsoft preparing to launch new consoles of their own, Sega chairman Isao Okawa pulled his company out of the hardware business. But Sega's dark times were only beginning. Okawa was losing a personal battle with cancer. Even as he struggled to find a new direction for his company, Okawa's body was failing him, and he had to check into Tokyo University Medical Hospital. In his absence, Hideki Sato, the former head of Sega's software engineering, temporarily took the helm. Though Sato bravely maintained that Okawa was recovering, that simply was not the case. What did he say? I happened to meet with Sato the day that Mr. Okawa passed away, and Sato still claimed Okawa was getting better and would soon return to the company. In his last days, Okawa forgave Sega's debts to him and returned all of his shares of Sega and CSK stock as a gift. In Sega's case, a $695 million gift that would help the company survive the transition of becoming a multi-software manufacturer. So yeah, okay, so I guess this other thing was different. But I don't think he would have put like actual cash into Sega for $400 million. So I'm gonna check on that later. But yeah, I thought it was at the end of his life when he gave all the stock in. But yeah, that is what saved Sega from
It's
going
an
out of business.
extreme amount of money if he did both.
Yeah. So he went out swinging. He is definitely a legend in terms of Sega. On March 16th, 3:47 p.m., 74-year-old Isao Okawa died of a congestive heart failure. Upon learning of his friend's death, Sega co-founder David Rosen sent the following telegram. To the family of Mr. Isao Okawa. I am very saddened to learn of the passing of my friend and business associate, Mr. Isao Okawa. He was a man of great vision, who dedicated his energy and his many abilities to whatever task he undertook. He always maintained a very strong sense of responsibility. Mr. Okawa was always ready to listen and explore new ideas. He was an inspiration to the younger staff, as well as the management of Sega. He was a man with charisma, who loved music and good conversation. My wife and I always found Okawa-san to be gracious and kind. We will miss him and retain fond memories of our past times together. Sincerely, David and Masako Rosen. I don't think that was ever intended to be published, but, at least it's nice that it was. I got a reply from David Rosen.
Maybe they just handed it off to someone or to...
Maybe it was intended to be, sometimes these rich types play press games with this kind of stuff, even if it's meant as heartfelt. I did get a response to a letter I wrote from David Rosen, but he does not want to talk, and that sucks. I hope he's writing an autobiography. When Sega and CSK held a special memorial service for Okawa a few months later, more than 6,000 people arrived to pay their respects to the man who had become a citizen of the world. Okay, that's a weird thing to say. Citizen of the world, just because he, headed a company? Okay. Okawa, who started his career as an engineer before opening CSK and making the calculating investments that eventually made him a billionaire, was known for his charitable foundations. Better known for his charitable foundations than the companies he owned. Sucking up to the rich people here. As one would expect if you've met him or sat across a conference table from him, he did everything. Even his passing away in a very organized and dignified manner. Over a number of months prior to his passing, it was one of the better getting your affairs in order before you leave type situations I've ever seen in my life. I was privileged enough to go over 2 weeks ago to Japan to take part in the corporate funeral, which was attended by over 6,000 people, including Idei-san and Kukuragi-san. And I was the only gaijin on the corporate receiving line that welcomed and said goodbye to the guests. It was an incredible affair that laid testimony to the effect that this man had on the industry in Japan and in general, in the computer services and digital entertainment world in particular. More than 6,000 were physically present, and it was webcast to CSK offices in other cities. That might be a first. Webcast corporate funeral.
I like that he calls it a webcast. That does date it really nicely.
Yeah, that's like a perfect stored on Wikipedia term.
I'm
stream.
Peter Moore has said some more harsh things about Sega now that he's left, and now that he's out of the industry entirely. So I'm wondering if he would still say only favorable things about Okawa today. I mean, I've never heard anything really bad about him, but I'm just curious. what he really knew about Okawa. Video games, once thought to be a fad, have worked their way into the fabric of an international culture. Okay, so this is the example of Okawa dying. We're gonna go into here's how big video games are. All right, here we go. At present, Sony has shipped more than 80 million PlayStations worldwide, and Nintendo has sold more than 100 million Game Boys. With every successive generation, the video game industry keeps growing. And one of the people who built the industry, Odyssey designer Ralph Baer, is retired. Nolan Bushnell, founder of Atari, is still a rogue entrepreneur looking for his next big Chuck E. Cheese. Howard Lincoln, who rose to the corporate council to chairman of Nintendo, celebrated his 60th birthday by retiring from Nintendo to become the CEO of the Seattle Mariners. Vice President Al Gore selected Senator Joseph Lieberman as his running mate in his bid for the presidency. And Trip Hawkins, unwilling to give up the demise of his hardware system, converted 3DO into a highly successful software publisher. And then after 3DO goes away, he tries to get into the digital phone market. And for some reason it didn't work out for him. I honestly don't know why. But Digital Chocolate was not successful. I don't know if anyone knows about it. That's the name of the company, Digital Chocolate.
I vaguely remember seeing that.
On January 8th, 2002, a 55-year-old Minoru Arakawa shocked the industry by announcing his decision to retire effective immediately. There's question on whether it was his decision. Yes. Oh, Alex is... Oh, Alex...
Come save us, Alex.
Yeah, Alex might be coming in a sec. But, this will be, the very last paragraph we'll have him here for. Hello, Dilly.
All right.
Hey, Dilly. Good
All right.
call. The timing is impeccable.
Yes.
What did I miss?
Everything.
Not much,
Every
man.
last thing.
Our
Well,
shenanigans.
we just talked about digital chocolate
Yes.
Yeah, we just discussed digital chocolate.
and
That's
apparently 3DO being a highly successful software publisher.
Oh,
when
yeah.
this book came out.
I missed that part. Maybe highly successful software film.
I do want to see if anyone who made the Army Men games is still around to talk.
Oh, yeah, a lot. I mean, most of those devs were young.
Yeah, no. I don't mean like that. I just mean like, not averted from all this.
At one time, Arakawa looked to the heir apparent to take over the company when Nintendo Company Limited President Hiroshi Yamauchi retired, but Yoko Arakawa, Minoru's wife, and Yamauchi's daughter did not want to return to Japan. Yeah, because basically Hiroshi disowned them. So, I mean, not literally, but he didn't want Arakawa to take over Nintendo. That seems to be the case. But right before we finish up, we'll just take a quick break and see if Alex comes in the meantime. So we will be right back.
Nice.
All right, we are back for the final paragraph. Technically three paragraphs of this thing. That's the end?
Oh, wow.
Question
What an
mark.
appropriate opening
Just
sentence there at the end.
That's the end?
Yep.
Talk about an appropriate lead sentence here.
Yes, it is. For the way that this ends, because there is no great big dramatic ending. In many ways, this book has become the project that never ends. I had hoped to finish this book in 1995, then 1996. In 2000, I finally published the damn thing myself. How could I have known that the next 6 months would become some of the most eventful months in the history of gaming? Midway Games has finally abandoned the floundering coin-op game business. Bill Gates introduced Xbox. Nintendo unveiled GameCube and launched Game Boy Advance. PlayStation 2 launched in the United States. Sega discontinued Dreamcast, and Isao Okawa passed away. I'm grateful that Prima Publishing bought this book, but the deadline my editors set came up before early November launches of GameCube and Xbox, and bigger battles are brewing. In a recent study published in England, predicts that the size of the interactive market worldwide will double in size. It could be as big as $49 billion worldwide. And Dale, can you read the last sentence of Stephen
To
Kent?
put it another way. Sorry.
Go.
Always give me. To put it another way, the game never ends.
Yeah! Woo!
Yeah.
Woo! We've done it!
I'm finished.
We made
Oh
it
my
to the
God.
end of this goddamn thing.
We did it.
I'm
What did we
proud of
learn?
you.
How
I'm
many
proud of all
pages?
of you.
Okay, so I have a couple points, questions, follow up.
Okay.
Eye over here. First of all, so this thing was a vanity. He confesses at the end that this was a vanity project. Then Vanity published it. I published the damn thing myself. He says. So someone must pick it up later. So the first quarter then is
It's self-published.
on his own dime.
Yeah.
Fun.
Self-published.
I also want to know how many.
Go ahead, Dale.
I'm not judging. That's it. I'm not judging.
I heard how I heard how many, and then you cut out.
There's a publishing. Oh, I think maybe I need to bounce.
Yeah, you're cutting out a bunch. Anybody else have?
So we made it.
Yeah, we're at the end. Anybody
Yeah, well,
have any
okay,
reflections?
right? I've been I stayed up for this till like 4 to 6 in the morning, and it's been worth it, not because of the book, but because of the company. And
Aw.
Ethan, thank you for the read through. Everybody's been in here with us. It was awesome. It was awesome. And Ethan, do more read throughs, but smaller books, right? This is a pamphlet.
There's not that many smaller books.
I do. Oh, I do hope that we get to do some more readings and stuff like that, or just casual discussions of things. Because
Oh yeah, like
know.
the Xbox documentary is coming out in a couple days, so we'll probably do a viewing party of that.
yeah,
That would be great. Yes, sweet. Please do that. I'll stay up for that too.
Let's have a 2-pack movie night. We got
Yeah.
8-bit Xmas.
Yeah, 8-bit Christmas.
Oh, I'm so there for 8-bit Christmas.
Oh, man. And the story
It's
of
all gonna be
Xbox.
great.
So. The torture awaits.
Oh.
So yeah, we'll
The
probably
story
do
of
more fun
Xbox.
stuff after
Let's
this.
hear it. Let's hear it. There was
But-
DirectX.
all right,
put it
so
into a box.
Let us go around and get comments from everybody. So first of all, Bard, what is your feeling on Mr. Stephen Kent?
I think he talks a lot about food in a book about video games. That's one thing. At every convention, there is a remark about, well, the hot dogs were stale, and that the salad was being served. I get why. That's something that would stick in my mind as well. I do notice there's a lot of discrepancies and a lot of it's very American focused, and I get that because he's American, but it's not. For somebody who talks a lot about Japanese developers and companies, he lacks a bit of the foresight that I would and insight that I would attribute to somebody who's been in the industry, right? Who's been covering and writing for the industry for quite a while. And it's kind of strange. Like the we had at the end one of the comments about the Enix guy and the quote that he uses, and that he doesn't attribute to that. Like, hey, the I mode was actually a pretty darn big thing that major companies were making hundreds of millions on in Japan. And that mobile gaming was a huge thing by 1999 in Japan. And that even Sega already had a major presence in that market. And that he doesn't take that with, even though he does go to shows where that is being shown, is kind of strange to me, right? That he misses that. It helps that also with a lot of things when he makes a mistake that Ethan's there like, hey, is that correct? And I just noticed that a lot of things weren't correct, and there's a lot of questions on why he said certain things. I also noticed that he missed a bit, like you don't have to go very deep into the tech, but I noticed that he didn't really understand a lot of the tech behind it, which makes it some of his statements really weird for me as somebody who is interested in the technology behind it more than anything else. It makes it very strange when he makes weird links or things that are sometimes outright impossible. Otherwise, it reads okay, right? It's a book about video games. It reads away quite nicely.
I find that the as I continue to read it, oh yeah, these transitions are awful. It's like trying to go from one topic to another. He sucks really bad. But I have more to say on this, which I will say on the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine sometime. All right, Dilly, your general. Are you still awake? Are you still with us?
I was only here for the last chapter, but I will say it was a damn good chapter. No block quotes. Pretty well condensed. So I hope overall the book is like that.
Oh, you sweet son of a
21
child.
pages, like.
But no, I do agree with what you said that not the transitions aren't the greatest, and some things are just kind of passed by as like not as important. But in a way, I kind of get that if you're doing like the ultimate history, because if you're gonna write a book, like a part one from like between like 40 years, there's gonna be some things that you like honestly don't want to go too into detail about, even if they're important. But just because you don't want the book to be like, well, 2,000 pages long, having like specified details on everything, which I would like, but I can see why
Alex
that's
is
not
working on that.
ideal. I
Feels
guess.
like it's 2,000 pages long.
Yeah.
All right, Jacob, you've probably been here the most in terms of these readings. So what do you have to say about this piece of work?
Honestly, I don't know what to say. I've been kind of taking a bit of inspiration, actually, from the breadth of storytelling in this. I don't think I could possibly imagine anything this dense and convoluted and full of anecdotes that could have easily been their own little stories to themselves. I mean, I've tried doing a little bit of that myself to start off, but I think, like, if any of this were to be truly surpassed, it would probably have been better just as, like, a continuing volume. Imagine this book being broken up into, like, itself maybe, like, 4 or 5 volumes, and then, continue with a volume every 5 years or so.
I would definitely, if you ever feel the need to look at a comprehensive industry history, then look at Replay by Tristan Donovan sometime, because that is the better version of this book. But to Dale, my good friend, my stalwart companion, how do you feel about Mr. Stephen L. Kent and his ultimate history of video games?
Oh, Steven. You remember? I give you context though. He called it the first quarter, right?
When he first released it, yeah.
Right, with the Vanity Publishing that was when he was met with a real publisher. They're the ones that settled it with the ostentatious title of The
Yeah.
Ultimate History of Video Games. But what and I don't think that at any point, because he comes from access journalism. He did that for like 10 years. So basically he had a crap ton of block quote interviews and loose stories to tell that he then slapped into the book. And yeah, I totally agree. Replays the better shaping of that narrative. But it's funny because he was obviously first and got a lot of credit for it. But nowadays he's Mr. Authority in history, coming out with volume 2. Because in the early days he downplayed his. Oh, this is just because that's what it is. It's a journalistic narrative. It's not a history in that respect because it doesn't.
Yeah, I would
carry
call it a
the
press
research.
narrative.
So,
Of the
yeah, exactly. I forget the year. What year does it first publish?
2000, and then this is in 2001.
Right. Oh, it always strikes me as being later than what it
Yeah.
what I think it should. Nonetheless, it was like nearly the first of its kind out like that, particularly of that volume. But when the publishers did get a hold of it and slap it with that title, it took on that. Now it's 20 years later, and it's taken on that authority. And he's playing it up personally for volume 2. But there's some slop. There's journalistic slop there. He's like he's are there ethics in video game journalism? And of course, like, he's iconic in that a lot of the, like, think about how much Alex spends in terms of energy dispelling myths that are perpetuated in this book and then retold over and over and over.
But, the thing that gets me about that is that a lot of the things that he got were not from him, specifically. Like, there are a lot of things that he draws from Zap and Game Over, and even in some of the earlier...
That's right, yeah,
books.
that's right.
So they're, like, you call him the first, but, he's
I
just
shouldn't,
kind of
that's right, I shouldn't. You're right,
Yeah.
You're absolutely right,
He's
you're
kind
right.
of
There
just
are chunks
drawing
of the
stuff
book
together.
that are...
And, like, there are some unique stories in here and whatnot, but I wouldn't give him too much in terms of, being, like, the absolute king of it. He does quote at the beginning. He thanks Lenny Herman, and then you have all the other books where he got a lot of the basic narratives for the bigger companies. I mean, he is the first one to put
Right.
together, like, the Sega story. But yeah, whether or not he was trying to put out something that was supposed to be the ultimate history, the fact of the matter is this is a 500-page book, and it is going to be seen by people as having some weight and depth, and I'm just not sure that it really has that. It just kind of breezes by things, and it just kind of bombards you a lot of the time. Any other general comments on Kent? Kent
It
comments?
was mind-numbing.
I just think he has to do a food review issue. Right? All conventions.
Well, no, he's just because he's a journalist, and like somewhere in his massive notepads over the years, he had kept track of what they were feeding him.
But it's actually not like I'm joking, but it's also something that I would actually love him to do. Just get all those notes, and but give a note by note what happens at an event. How does it feel?
Right.
Yeah, his perspective is far more useful in terms of hashing out personalities. I think that he does a good job when he's not just blindly praising someone like Trip Hawkins. I think he does a good job in bringing out personalities, not only with the block quotes, but often when he does descriptions of stuff. So I feel like if he was going to play to his strengths, that's what he should do. talk about the press story. I wouldn't be that interested in reading it, but at least there would, maybe there would be something there for me.
I mean, in terms of storytelling, it's like a C plus.
It's cohesive.
It's cohesive, but there's no great. At no point in reading this book are you cheering a narrative. Are you engaged with it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's too much of it's like a document because of the block quotes, because of that journalistic structure. This is not Masters of Doom.
Yeah.
Or even Puzzle Wars.
Yeah, he just kind of jumps around with people. He does a poor job kind of introducing them. And
yeah. It's like a documentary in a book, in a way.
But generally, documentaries.
There's not much in storytelling.
Yeah. So it's really, it's a largely a chronicle kind of thing, and it tries to make a lot of assumptions about stuff just based on what press people were saying at the time. So that's why I would generally call it a press history.
Yeah.
You can track a lot. Some of these things he did himself, like especially for like Next Generation magazine. A lot of the sections in this book are based on like interviews he did for Next Generation magazine. So he was like the retro correspondent. But you can like in terms of if you're saying that this information has never been published before, a lot of it has, and it was mainly him doing it. So like good on him for that. But it was published in gaming magazines.
Periodicals. Yeah, he'd done like 100 periodicals. He's like, you know what? I got enough to put a book together. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, though he did rewrite them.
I can't blame him on that. It's something that he has a certain amount of experience in doing that, and it did make a book that launched a lot of us into this interest, right? For a lot of people, this is going to be one of the first books that they read where they go, oh, I want to know more of this. Can I do more in this game history ordeal? Can I do more in finding out the story of?
Actually, I was the opposite of that. Funny enough.
Yeah?
Yeah, I come into it with... I can't remember. I read into the Smiths prior to getting my hands on a copy of the Kent book. So I actually never read it before hearing all of its, or many of its inconsistencies decried.
So, but I feel like it's, there should be a general audience introduction into this stuff. But I just feel like it's not as good a read, especially as I remember. I think it's really meant to be just kind of picked at. It's not really meant to be read. And that's why it doesn't have a lot of narrative through lines. Like when there's a new section, you can stop and then pick it up later. And you lose
like
nothing.
a bathroom.
Yeah.
It's a bathroom reader, is what we're saying.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a coffee
The
table.
ultimate bathroom history of video games is what it should be called.
Yeah, so I don't... That's what I feel like kind of the reading pace he was going for. And I think that does a disservice to the very interesting interweaving of the industry. Like, you get to see these same characters show up at different companies and all this sort of stuff. He just kind of clumsily throws it in. Like, everything about it is just kind of clumsy. And the editor did nothing. The editor maybe fixed a spelling error or two, but...
The editor should be ashamed. Oh, and let's not forget, if we're capping off the summary of all this, that we spent a detour for a while identifying the massive amount of work that some online
Zub,
anonymous individual did to version 1 of this, the first quarter, where he too cranked out some kind of document that looked like yours. Not quite as hefty, but like as best he could in the early 2000s for research.
He took,
of which some of those corrections were adopted.
A very
Not
minor
all,
amount,
for
like
some reason, but whatever.
Yeah,
I know. In other words, the development editor was an internet rando. So I mean,
That's holy heck.
Yeah, let me pull this
Yeah.
up of
What
Zoob.
was the? Yeah, you can tell me the dude's name, his
Zoob.
online name anyway. And he, who?
Zoob. Z-U-B-E.
Zoob. Oh,
Zoom.
rest in peace, Zoob.
So let me pull this on up on the old
Yeah, he
Wayback
delivers a
Machine.
100-page document to
Alright.
Kent saying, "Here's some of my comments on your thing,"
That's
or he published it online, and Kent found it
That's actually kind
and
of cool.
adopted those.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I think that those occur before his site, before the. Who publishes the damn thing?
It's
We've
yeah, it says right at the end. Or at the beginning it should say.
we've
too.
discussed this, but I can't. It's not notable.
Three Rivers Press.
There you go. Okay.
Three Rivers.
So, yeah, let me pull that up again. So, yeah, so like a lot of this stuff is the same stuff that's in my thing. Let's go to the end here. Ethernet should be Ethernet.
this is Zoom
Yeah.
now. You're talking.
Yeah.
Zoom's that guy. Zoom goes right down to a like grammatic like typos.
I mean, we
spelling
did a
level
couple
on
of
him.
those, but mainly it was like names.
Yeah, but Zoom is also like he's also covering factual back-checking information and sort of some interpretation. He's not just limited to, "Hey, I found all your spelling mistakes."
Let's see. Digital versatile disc. I don't remember seeing this. That would have been. I hope it's not in there.
Oh, yeah.
Two for the NES. So drinks. So yeah. So sometimes he'll do stuff like this, like after joining Squaresoft, he made 3 computer games, and I think that's actually corrected in here. Actually, no, that's not. That he only talked about the NES games, but like that stuff I wouldn't put in there. You know, that as just it's wrong. He's just not providing the information. You want to mention the
So
game called?
it's just saying this is wrong.
But there are a lot of that stuff.
Okay.
Kent covers a lot of the different flavors of wrong.
Yeah, we
but
caught this
that's
one,
a stretch.
Turok Dinosaur
That's a
Hunter, or it's Turok the Dinosaur Hunter. It's actually just Turok Dinosaur Hunter, like all this stuff, and like he just ignored a lot of these things, even though Zoob is credited right at the front of the book. Yeah, like right here. Yeah, there were months when I cursed Zoob, but now I wish to thank him. You can thank him by using his correction.
Why would you curse?
Damn
Why would you
you,
curse the
Zoom.
guy?
That down. Why didn't you
Show me
email
how
the
to
dude?
spell
And just-
Ethernet.
Like, yeah, right. Why would he?
First and
Like,
foremost,
he
I
would
wish
be
to thank
walking
it.
around his,
I wish to
walking
thank it.
around
Aren't you,
his
Zoom?
home. Just
Zoob!
Be thankful somebody read your goddamn 500-page vanity book, Steven.
I like the idea that Stephen Kent saw this guy's website and he realized that he made he's like, I didn't capitalize net and Ethernet. No.
Damn you!
That would be unsettling. I mean, if you stumbled into it, yeah. If you did your little vanity book and then you discovered some dude's 100-page website.
like a month later.
Nitpicking.
Like a month later.
Like a
You're like,
handwritten note.
Like you have your morning
No.
coffee and you open up one random website that somebody sent you over email or even over a letter. Just because
Yeah. Stephen Kent gets a letter to his
But-
house from an unnamed address.
But Stephen does mention in the preface, I believe, that Zoob reaches out to him in advance.
First and foremost, I wish to thank a gentleman at Colorado State University that prefers to be known as Zoob, meticulous and far too much time on his hands. This fellow combed through my text and found pages of minutia and larger errors, all wanting correction. There were moments when I cursed Zoob, but now I wish to thank him.
There you go.
Yeah, but I
Zoob
do
is
like
the hero here.
that he eventually goes, but now I wish to thank him, right? Because you make this thing and you having your morning coffee and this dude emails you and just here's a list of mistakes. You're a failure. You don't deserve to write about
But you had to.
Zoom.
You see, he had to print it though, right? Like
Yeah.
you really couldn't. You wouldn't have been able to have put it. And wouldn't have. He was trying to sell it.
Yeah.
He was trying to, because he'd
But
already
he
sold
got-
the information
yeah.
once. Now he was repackaging it into book. And
Yeah.
so, that's what you have to do. He
Yeah.
should be, he's thankful to Zoom now because Three Rivers decided that it was worth a second run.
Yeah, because of the Zoob.
Yes, it was all Zoom.
Where is
Wonder how much
Zoom
money
now?
Zoom got out of this.
Well,
Probably not
Zoom-
much.
Well,
Dylan,
Zoom.
get on it.
This is only available on
Hold
Wayback Machine because he wiped everything else off his site. So
I
he
found.
Ooh, what?
he is still alive, but
Oh, Zoob is, you're talking.
yeah,
Okay.
Zoob is still alive. He updated recently, but he took everything down. So
Okay.
Interesting.
I looked up Colorado State and Zoob, and I got a guy named Daniel Zoob who went to the Colorado State University Energy Institute in 2008. Is this you? Is this you?
I might have been
Answer
able to
your
figure out
call.
who he was, but I can't. Yeah, I didn't.
Answer my call.
Zoob, if you hear this, we're looking for you. We'd
Is he
love to
in the
have
server right
conversation
now?
with you.
Jeez.
Um,
He could
Dale,
be one
are
of
you
us.
Zoob?
Scroll down and look for Z.
Z.
No, I'm not.
In the
Hubs?
server, what is
We
this?
need to
No,
talk.
I didn't go to CS.
Wait.
It's Hubs.
Wait.
Hubs. No, yeah. Dilly, you're onto something here.
Oh my god.
Hubs is OSU, but that's close.
That's
Basically-
close. Oh my god.
The dude Zoom is the Colorado version of Hubs.
Maybe
He's like
so.
the
Maybe
dark-
if we
he's
put
like the
down
dark
beer
version of Hubs.
and onion burgers.
I will
Wait a
shred
second,
the
what's Hubs
magazine.
backwards? Is that where we're going here?
Yes, Zaba.
Is Zoom Hubs backwards?
It's like-
Oh no!
No,
Oh
it's
no!
Zaba.
Wait.
We're almost there.
Sabu.
Zaboo. Wait.
Saba.
Wait.
He's throwing off.
Zaba.
We're through the looking glass, people.
This is gonna look really weird because we're all. I don't know if you're still streaming this,
I am.
but we're just all sitting here going Zaba, Zav Hubs.
But we will be
I'm about to
moving.
crack into a deep conspiracy theory here.
But we will be
That's-
moving in just
What
a
is
second.
what is Zabu backwards? Maybe
Ubaz.
You buzz?
Okay,
So maybe that was
well,
it. He
that
started
will
with
be
New
it
Buzz.
for
No,
the
that's
reading
not it.
of The Ultimate History of Video Games by Stephen L.
Yeah.
Kent. But we will be continuing on and talking about our choices for the video game Hall of Fame notables here at Gaming Alexandria.
Oh,
But
God.
thanks everybody for riding along on this journey, and hopefully I'll see you soon on the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine. Thanks much.
It was great.